promoting win-win cooperation, multilateralism and free trade. That's what President Moon and Chinese President Xi Jinping agreed upon during their meeting. China's leader also says North Korea remains committed to abandoning its nuclear weapons. Plus, laying the groundwork for US President Donald Trump's trip to South Korea this weekend. His point man on North Korea is in town for talks with South Korean officials. Our top story this morning, a hectic day of diplomacy lies ahead for South Korean President Moon Jae-in as the G20 summit in Osaka officially kicks off in the coming hours. Later on this Friday, President Moon will take part in a leaders' session where the member states will discuss the global economy and international trade. He will also hold talks with a handful of his global counterparts, including a crunch meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin, a key player in efforts to denuclearize North Korea. Our Park Hee-jun has this report from Osaka.
On the opening day of the G20 Osaka summit on Friday, President Moon Jae-in will engage in economic discussions focused on addressing the global uncertainties brought about by the U.S.-China trade conflict. A session will be held on the global economy, trade, and investment, one of the four themes of the 14th G20 meeting. President Moon is expected to share his government's fiscal policies, including its push for a supplementary budget bill. He is also expected to call for joint diplomatic efforts among the G20 nations in addressing global economic issues, including trade tensions. With the G20 being one of the first bodies to take action in combating the global financial crisis in 2008, active discussions will be held to prevent such a meltdown from happening again. President Moon will also be occupied with a scheduled summit with Indonesia and pull-aside talks with India and the Netherlands. But attention mainly focuses on President Moon meeting a key player in the North Korea denuclearization talks, Russia. This is perhaps the most important discussion of the day in terms of furthering his peace drive on the Korean Peninsula. President Moon is expected to learn of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's thoughts from Kim's bilateral summit with Vladimir Putin in April and ask for Russia's continued support for his peace drive on the Korean Peninsula. And besides a series of talks, there's the question of whether President Moon will be able to hold talks with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. President Moon has made it clear that he's willing to meet to resolve the labor dispute between the two countries, and he's open to a last-minute meeting. But this appears to depend entirely on Japan. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News, Osaka.
Now, President Moon Jae-in kicked off his schedule in Osaka with one of the most important meetings he'll have in Japan, talks with Chinese President Xi Jinping. During their discussions on Thursday, President Xi, who recently met North Korea's leader in Pyongyang, insisted the regime's commitment to denuclearization hasn't changed a bit, despite the prolonged lull in diplomacy. Shin Se-min reports.
Chinese President Xi Jinping says North Korea's will to denuclearize remains unchanged and that it also hopes to push inter-Korean relations forward, perhaps a game changer in the rather slow denuclearization process seen in recent months.
North Korea's will to denuclearize remains unchanged. It is willing to pursue reconciliatory moves with the South, and the dialogue track will stay the same.
The presidential office said shortly after the fifth face-to-face between leaders Moon Jae-in and Xi in Japan, who are both there to attend the G20 summit, that Kim Jong-un is hoping to swiftly address the impasse in nuclear talks through continued dialogue. Those are some of the takeaways seen from the Seoul Beijing summit, with the Chinese leader having embarked on a state visit to Pyongyang just last week. Reaffirming that the regime is in sync, South Korean leader relayed his appreciation to Chinese president.
지난주 부총리 취임 후 처음으로 북한에 방문하고 김정은위원장과 회담하는 등 한반도의 완전한 비핵화와 항구적인 평화 정착을 위해 본질적인 역할과 기여를 해주고 계신 데 대해서 감사드립니다.
And the Chinese leader also expressed his strong will to play an active role in pursuing the goal of peace together as partners.
If our two nations join hands, we can do a lot of things. China will pursue endless progress with Korea and contribute to maintain peace on the Korean Peninsula and in the region.
The Blue House added that President Moon said denuclearization is intricately linked to the resolution of other issues, such as the deployment of an American anti-missile battery in South Korea, which Beijing has asked for a solution to. The sideline meeting between Moon and Xi marks the start of a series of one-on-ones among major related players. President Moon's meeting Friday with Russia's Putin, himself close to Kim Jong-un, should also provide Seoul with some insights into the regime's motives and desires. Shin Se-min, Arirang News, Osaka.
Now, as a follow-up to that report, the leaders of South Korea and China also touched upon other issues during their talks, including the US-China row over 5G technology, as well as the US missile defense system that is deployed here in South Korea. According to the spokesperson for the Blue House, President Xi raised the THAAD issue and asked President Moon to resolve the problem that China has opposed from the get-go. To that, Mr. Moon said the THAAD deployment is closely linked to denuclearization. The two saw eye to eye on the benefits of open and multilateral trade. President Xi emphasized that it not only benefits both sides, but also the international community, stressing the importance of close coordination under this principle. The two leaders also exchanged views on environmental issues, including fine dust. President Xi said China is already making 10 times the effort to protect the environment, but vowed to do more. President Moon also called for joint efforts to tackle the fine dust issue, especially as China acquires the necessary experience and technology. Now, it was one of the more eye-catching pre-summit meetings in Osaka, given the country's grim shared history and their ongoing animosity for each other. However, the leaders of China and Japan met on Thursday ahead of the G20 summit, vowing to improve their relations as eternal neighbors. The meeting was also anticipated as Xi Jinping is the first Chinese leader to visit Japan in almost 9 years. Jaein with more.
Meeting a day before the curtain comes up on the G20 summit in Osaka, visiting Chinese President Xi Jinping and Chinese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe sat down to discuss improving their long-strained bilateral ties. According to a statement released by the Japanese Foreign Press Secretary on Thursday, the two leaders agreed to have permanent and close communication as eternal neighbors. China-Japan ties have been uneasy for decades due to a territorial dispute over a group of uninhabited East China Sea islets, as well as the bloody legacy of Japan's wartime aggressions. During the meeting, Abe asked China to exercise self-restraint over its activities around the Japan-held Senkaku Islands in the East China Sea, and emphasized the importance of demilitarizing the disputed islands, which are called Diaoyu in China. The two leaders also stressed the importance of promoting free and fair trade in the face of an increasingly complicated global economic situation. Watchers say the US-China trade war is pushing Beijing to improve ties with Tokyo, which is also facing US pressure on trade, especially regarding its automobile and farm sectors. The two countries began their pledge to forge closer ties last October when Abe visited Beijing and signed a wide range of agreements, which included a currency swap pact. Abe invited Xi for a state visit next spring, which the Chinese leader accepted. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Visiting U.S. Special Representative for North Korea Stephen Biegun has just started talks here in Seoul with his South Korean counterpart Lee Do-hoon. Their meeting is due to last a couple of hours and focus on ways to resume talks with the North, as well as narrowing down the denuclearization issues for their leaders to discuss when they meet this weekend. Biegun will meet Seoul's Unification Minister Kim Yeon-chul this afternoon. Kim is expected to update Biegun on inter-Korean ties, including Seoul's plans to provide 50,000 tons of rice aid to the North. There has been speculation about Biegun's possible contact with the North Koreans, but it doesn't seem that likely, as he'll be busy with his own team and US officials at the embassy to prepare for President Trump's visit to Seoul this weekend. Now, after 2 consecutive months of growth, South Korea's investment dropped sharply in May. Statistics Korea says capital investment, that slumped 8.2% on month due to falling investment in machinery, auto and transport equipment. Industrial output contracted 0.5% due in part to decreased oil refining, reversing 2 months of growth. Consumption went up by about 1% on month. In domestic politics, National Assembly Speaker Moon Hee-sang is meeting with the floor leaders of the 3 main parties in a bid to end the over 80-day standstill at Parliament. The meeting comes after the main opposition Liberty Korea Party pulled out of a deal reached between the rival parties this week after failing to win endorsement from all its lawmakers. They've since claimed the deal is null and void and called for new negotiations. The ruling and minor opposition parties, however, are seeking to push ahead with the deal regardless, which entails holding a plenary session today to vote on extending the terms of a special parliamentary committees that come to an end this month. Eyes are on whether they'll be able to reach a last-minute compromise. Switching gears now, the outdoor swimming pools along Seoul's Hangang River Park. They open for the summer today. The 7 pools are located in areas like the Duksom, Yeouido and Jamwon parts of the park. As well as swimming or relaxing by the poolside, visitors can enjoy other activities such as survival games, a bubble dance festival and safety training. The pools are open from 9 a.m. until 7 p.m. until August 25th. Visitors must wear a swimming cap, though, if they venture into the pool. The United States has reiterated that it does not want war with Iran. For more on this and other news from around the world, let's turn to our Hong Yu. So, Yu, tell us about what the acting US defense chief has been telling Washington's allies about the Trump administration's stance.
During a news conference at the NATO Defense Ministerial in Brussels on Thursday, acting U.S. Defense Secretary Mark Esper, who stepped into the role of acting Pentagon chief on Monday, reiterated that the U.S. is not seeking war with Iran. Esper said the U.S. wants talks to negotiate a new nuclear deal.
Our goal is to bring Iran to the negotiating table to conclude a comprehensive, enduring deal that addresses Iran's nuclear program, its ballistic missile development and proliferation, its support for terrorism, and other malign activities. Our strategy is, at its core, an economic and diplomatic one. Again, we do not seek armed conflict with Iran, but we are ready to defend U.S. forces and interests in the region. No one should mistake restraint for weakness.
Prior to those comments, Iran's Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif confronted President Trump's recent threat against Iran. Trump said Tuesday that any subsequent attack Iran might carry out on anything American could be met with Iran's obliteration. But Zarif said the U.S. is not in a position to obliterate Iran. Both countries are on the same page of not seeking war, but Zarif said U.S. actions have been, quote, confrontational and provocative. And in his latest tweet, Zarif wrote that U.S. sanctions aren't alternative to war, they are war. Washington and Tehran's relations took a dangerous turn after the Trump administration pulled out of the 2015 Iran nuclear deal and started imposing crushing sanctions on Iran. The tensions peaked last week when the U.S. deployed 1,000 additional troops to the Middle East in response to Iran's recent downing of a U.S. drone. Ford Motor is closing a number of facilities in Europe by the end of 2020, a move which will lead to 12,000 workers losing their jobs. The American auto giant says it will close 6 assembly and component manufacturing plants across Europe. In a press release Thursday, the company says around 2,000 jobs to be cut will be salaried positions, adding it's part of the 7,000 that Ford was reducing globally. It added the closures are part of Ford's plan to improve manufacturing efficiency. Twitter is putting together a framework by which it will hide certain tweets from political figures that violate platform rules based upon an assessment of whether the tweets met public interest. When a tweet does not appear to meet the public interest, Twitter is going to put a notice hiding the tweet from the public unless they click on it. This applies to verified accounts of any politicians that has at least 100,000 followers. A cross-functional team at Twitter will determine what tweets should be hidden, and in instances that violate the rules on abuse, harassment, and incitement, the politician would be asked to take the tweet down. There are concerns over whether the censorship can be transparent and unbiased.
Time now for our Life and Info segment, where we focus on information useful for your everyday life. And as we near the summer holiday season, at least if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, many of us are trying to slim down a touch. And this, of course, requires watching what we eat and is easier said than done. So to go over some do's and don'ts, we have our Oh Soo-young in the studio. So Soo-young, there are 1,000,001 different ways to lose weight if you put your mind to it. But can you just tell us which diets actually work and which ones are kind of the passing fads that will go away?
Right, well, it definitely is that time of year when everyone's trying to shed a couple of pounds for the summer. And as you said, there are countless diet plans out there, and this includes, of course, the rather disgusting cabbage soup diet. There's also the high-protein Jaein diet, among the countless other plans. And
have you tried the cabbage soup diet?
I actually haven't, but I've been around people who have, and I must tell you, it's
smell, right?
Very unpleasant. But then they do promise very fast results. That's why people go on these diets. But most of them involve limiting or even excluding certain food groups. And that's when you should be very wary, as these popular diet plans are often based on dodgy science.
Well, yeah, there's nothing wrong with wanting to lose weight, but you must try and do it in the most healthy way as possible. If you starve yourself, you are going to run into numerous different health issues there. But when it comes to losing weight, the main thing most of the books tell us is to focus on reducing our carb intake.
That's right. Carbs have somehow become public enemy number one.
Right.
And the thing is, though, carbs, this is mostly, bread, rice, spaghetti, or even fruit.
You mean the tasty food?
Yes, the tasty foods. Most diets tell us to cut down on them drastically, or even get rid of them completely from our diet plans. But the thing is, dietitians say that restricting carbs entirely from our diet can actually be counter-effective in the long run.
When you limit your intake of carbs, you lose water weight, so you are not actually losing fat. Also, you are recommended to have around 300 grams of carbohydrates every day to produce fuel for our bodies and also protect our muscles. We are also deprived of the water-soluble vitamins that are contained in carbs.
Carbohydrates, protein, and fat contain essential nutrients and minerals that your body and brain needs to function properly. And if you limit these nutrients, particularly carbs, you're likely to experience symptoms like headaches, constipation, and even bad breath. But more critically and ironically, your metabolism is also likely to slow down.
Yeah, that's what comes with age as well. People's metabolism slows down, and that's why middle-aged people tend to put on that bit of weight. But you need your metabolism to be fairly high for your body to actually burn energy and for you to lose weight, right?
Right, exactly. So your energy burning function will actually stagnate if you cut down on carbs, which could make it easier for you to gain weight in the long run. And that's just one of the long-term effects a crash diet can have on your health. Rapid weight loss or a drastic restriction of food can also lead to malnutrition, gallstones, fatigue, cholesterol, and heart disease.
When you decide to lose weight by a dramatic margin, let's say 10 kilograms in a month, the first problem many people experience are gallstones, as your body produces less bile, and the second problem is iron deficiency. Iron, of course, is needed to produce blood. On top of that, your digestive system doesn't function properly and could lead to long-term complications with your intestines and your stomach.
Yeah, so he went through a couple of the nasty health effects that these crash diets can have on you if you try them out. But so how can we slim down in a way that is relatively going to show us quick results, but also in a sensible way?
Well, the first thing you should really do is check if it's appropriate or even safe for you to go on a diet plan, because you might be underweight and then that would be dangerous.
Yeah.
And the best way to check whether you're at an appropriate weight is to look at your body mass index, and you can easily do this online. Experts say that you should aim to lose about 5 to 10% of your starting weight if you are overweight, and that would be a rate of between half a kilo and a kilogram per week. And this could be done by consuming about 500 to 600 calories less than usual every day. But if you've got a trip to the beach or a special day coming up and you want fast results, then dietitians recommend 3 steps, which are reducing salt, having smaller dinner portions, and avoiding alcohol and snacks in between.
Cutting down on salt can help you shed weight in a short amount of time, but the thing is, it's not sustainable as it's mostly water weight. If you start having regular amounts of salt again, you can go back to your normal weight within days. So that's one effective but short-lived way to lose weight quickly.
The dietitian I spoke to showed us an example of a quick, healthy, and most importantly, a filling meal that gives you all the nutrients you need. It's 60% carbs, 30% protein, and about 10% fat. It takes less than 15 minutes to prepare using ingredients that you'd normally have in your fridge. 2 cups of vegetables stir-fried with rice with a dash of oil and salt, and even chopped chilies if you want to kick to the flavour.
Yeah, well, looking at that dish, it doesn't look particularly small. Is that just for one person, or?
Right, it does look very big, but that's because it's been diluted with vegetables.
And you're able to eat sausages as well, it looks like.
Yeah, exactly. That's quite a lot of sausages.
Right.
So,
well, the common misconception is that people try and cut out fat altogether, but you do need a certain amount of fat just to keep you going through the day, because that's actually what gives you the energy there. But how many calories do you think a dish like we're looking at there might actually contain?
Well, the dietitian said it contains 300 calories, and if
Is that all? 300 calories?
300, and
wow.
if you'd used a full portion of rice for one person, one whole serving, then that would be 500. So you've cut down 200 calories.
Right, and I think the recommended daily amount for an adult male is like 2,500 calories a day, and for women it's around 2,000 calories a day. So you could potentially eat 3 of those meals a day if you wanted to eat the same thing 3 times and still lose weight without even having to do that much exercise.
Exactly.
We must stress that exercise, if you add that into your diet regime as well, then you're going to lose weight much faster, and it's probably safer than going through these crash diets.
Exactly, much healthier, definitely.
Soo-young, thank you for your tips today. I'm going to put them into action, so my body is looking wonderful at the swimming pool later this summer. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Good morning. Friday is shaping up to be muggy and uncomfortable. The discomfort index shows that high temperatures and humidity will make many feel uncomfortable by the mid-afternoon, so let's take it easy today and also drink plenty of water. Some eastern regions will see passing showers with 5 to 40 millimeters of precipitation expected, but the rest of the country will have humid conditions and partly sunny skies. And daily highs in most areas will be a couple of notches actually lower than yesterday. Seoul getting up to 28 degrees, Jeju getting up to 26 degrees Celsius, but muggy conditions will make it feel sticky. And the monsoon rains, of course, return on Saturday, and southern parts of the country will see heavier showers again, and that rain will linger into Sunday. Meanwhile, Seoul should have mostly sunny Sunday. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for viewers around the world.
Well, that's all the news and weather we have for now. Just a reminder that President Trump of the United States is coming to Seoul this weekend, so we're going to have comprehensive coverage of his stay in Seoul and perhaps even the DMZ. We don't know that for sure quite yet, but yes, we'll have coverage all throughout the weekend. So stay tuned to Arirang TV for that. And our next newscast is coming up at noon Korea time with our very own Lee Ji-yoon. So until then, goodbye.
From Arirang Radio, this is Good Morning Seoul. Arirang.